What's going on, guys? My name's David, and today I want to give you my take on what the best way is to train for arm wrestling and what type of equipment and exercises you need to do to reach an elite level. I believe that most people, if you have a solid base in genetics, if you have decent bone structure, you can get to an elite level, and in 10, 15 years of training, you can beat Levon. Maybe not Levon, but you could get up to a very high level. And it's all about progressive overload, setting a crazy goal for yourself in terms of strength across different lifts, and then day in and day out, hammering away towards that goal and increasing those numbers. If you double your strength on certain key movements, that strength will for sure transfer onto the table and your opponents will feel this. So let's get right into it. The one muscle group that makes an arm wrestler is the pronator. This is the muscle that is only really developed in arm wrestlers, and if you want to be a high-level arm wrestler, you need to have a strong and also a big pronator muscle. And you should be training in two separate ways. First is dynamically, second is statically. The best dynamic exercise I found is using a strap. This is a moving strap I found around the house. I like it a lot. But usually people just use judo belts, and the best way to train this is to attach your belt to a cable. So here's a video of me doing this lift on the cable. And you can see that Sam Sulik was filming that because he's my boy. This is better than doing them standing, like usually you see arm wrestlers do, because standing, the issue with that is that you're training to be stronger when you're opened up. This is when most of the force goes into your pronator. When you're up here at the ending position, there's not much pulling on your pronator, right? This is the end. But if it's attached to a cable, it's still pulling at you when you're at the top position. And this is the part you want to be strong in when you're actually arm wrestling someone, because as soon as your wrist starts to break, you're losing. So you need to have strength in the upper position, and the best way to get that strength is to train something where you pull it aside. And the best way to train the static pronator is to do something I've seen Reno Masic come up with. It's a very innovative method, and it is to use a strap to take away the work that your bicep would be doing, to really isolate the pronator and only statically lift weight with the pronator. And this is what it looks like. You need to have a judo belt that you wrapped in a knot in a circle like this. If you're training your right arm, the belt goes on your neck and the other half goes on your armpit, and then your arm goes in here. And then you do it with thumb pronation. Pronation around the hand doesn't work as well. I tried it. So do it with the thumb, and you attach it to a cable and you just pull back statically. So now your bicep isn't working at all. It's just your pronator trying to hold it all together. And you'll see that the pronator is actually getting activated. It's not just getting stopped by the friction of the belt, because I've definitely had my pronator completely fail on this exercise. My hand went from here to here. So I know that the pronator has to be working. And if you do this, it's gonna allow you to lift way heavier loads on your pronator than you could have just done with something like a standard Devon lift. The second muscle group that is mostly unique to arm wrestlers is the radial deviation muscles. And this is what allow you to keep your hand in this position other than this. This is also called posting by people like Devon. And you should be training this in two ways, just like the pronator, both dynamically and statically. The best way to train this dynamically is to just do it off the bench seated. And this is a video of me doing it. You just put it on the edge of your leg, and then you just do reps. I do rep scheme of 12, 10, 8, and then 6. And a fifth set I'll do with about 20 reps doing a burnout set. And that's gonna hypertrophy those muscles really well. And you should also be doing this in a static way. And just like I've shown you for pronation, this involves a belt. And I will give credit to Reno Masic. He's the guy that came up with this. Maybe someone else came up with it beforehand, but this is where I learned it from. You can use some kind of strap. This time it can be a judo belt or one of these thumb straps. You just pull back like this. This is the way I do it. I grab onto the belt, But something that would be even more efficient is to do the wrap that Devin does. And this is going to take away the squeezing. So it's going to completely isolate the posting muscle, the radial deviation muscles. And you do this kind of wrap, right? This kind of wrap. So now you're not squeezing at all, but your pronator or your radial deviation is still holding it. And then attach to the cable and you pull back. The third muscle group that you absolutely need to have developed as an arm wrestler is ability to cup, and it is this. And there's different aspects to cupping, which is why I'm going to provide 3 separate exercises on how to train this most effectively. So cupping, if you're wrapped around someone's hand, it all starts in the fingers. Your fingers need to be strong and rigid. And the best way to train your fingers is something like what Schoolboy does with barbell curls, or something that like Vitaly Laletin does with a special machine that trains your fingers. You also need to train this hinging aspect of these joints. And the best way to do this, and I think this is extremely crucial for arm wrestlers, is to use a wrist max or some other device that targets this movement. So I have a wrist max. This is the same thing that Hermes Gasparini uses. And this trains this hinging motion. It trains your hand to be strong in this very specific position that you need for arm wrestling. And the last cupping exercise that you need to be training is the one that targets your forearm and your ability to push back against the force just with your hand. And this can be done with a bench supported wrist curl, like how I'm doing it here. And I believe this is better than doing them seated off the bench with a barbell or with one dumbbell seated off the bench, because this puts you in a position that mimics arm wrestling. You're upright and you're doing it exactly as you would on a real table. So the main takeaway that I want to provide to you guys is that you need to focus on dynamic and static lifts both together. You can't just do static lifts, kind of like what Devin Larratt teaches or what other mainstream arm wrestling sources tell you to do, because this is not how you reach elite levels of strength. From one angle, it does make sense to only train the aspects that are directly involved in an actual arm wrestling match, but you have to also look at the decades and decades of data we have from powerlifters that have used these strength and also hypertrophy blocks to reach the top levels. There's never been a powerlifter that has only done singles, doubles, and triples to reach the highest level. Pretty much all of them also do hypertrophy exercises and hypertrophy blocks, so periods of time where they're only training for size to get their muscle bigger, and then they transfer that into strength later on in different blocks. And furthermore, we know from scientific literature that the cross-sectional area of a muscle is directly proportional to your strength level. So the bigger a muscle is, the stronger it's going to be. And this is a fact that you cannot overlook. You have to also focus on hypertrophy in your muscle. So you must have at least separate days where you train a muscle dynamically and also statically. So that's it for the video, guys. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you found it useful. And if you're just getting into arm wrestling and you need some equipment to use to start doing these lifts, I've linked the strap I use. It's a judo strap that you can get for a cheap price. And also the wrist max, which targets your cupping in the way that you need for arm wrestling. I've linked those in the description, so please check them out.